Hi, everybody. Welcome to your Wednesday call, broadcast, podcast, video. My name is Lee Honish. I am the former head loss mitigator for IndyMac Bank's HELOC division. I am the foremost leading authority on distressed properties, the marketing of that, and one of the top marketers in America, period. Today, we're going to talk about the order of events, and we're going to talk about some numbers and some graphs and everything that would be beneficial to all of you. So I have a live coaching call going on at the same time, and the question stood, what do I think is going to happen? If it's your first time watching me, if it's your first time on this call, I'll state it again. There are two things that I operate on in my life. Well, there's one very simple principle that I operate on in my life. I do meditate, I do manifest, I do believe that you literally, either things will happen or they won't happen. Okay. That is why I'm so successful over the last year and a half, right? I'm a big believer in The Secret. A woman I would like to call mentor and friend, Rhonda Byrne, wrote an amazing book, and it's changed my mindset dramatically, to say the very least. So things will either happen or they won't happen. So I want to talk about indefinite things that are definite. Now, there are lots of things I think about and that I hypothesize about. As a 30-plus year person in the banking industry, as an executive, as an asset manager, as a retained asset manager, basically, I look at numbers and trends, all right? Enough qualification on what I'm capable of. And if you really want to know, ask anybody who does short sales. I'm the guy who taught everybody in 2007. All right, enough qualifying. Here's what I know at this moment. I know for a fact we're looking at 26% of the distressed market right now. So wherever you are in the country, go ahead and request NODs, NOSs, auction dates, list pendences. I don't care what it is. Or pull a national number, which doesn't really exist, but feel free to pull it. And what you're looking at is roughly 20 to 30% of the active market that is actively in distress. That is what I know for sure. I also know by looking at a chart, it's rolling out from the East Coast to the West Coast, which I hypothesized or thought about. I don't know. Marvin's probably on the call. Oh, he has surgery today, but one of my coaching students has kind of tracked this. I talked about it 4 or 5 months ago. I said it's going to start Florida and roll out. And it's New Jersey and Florida, and they're the ones seeing the highest activity, right? Those are things I know for sure. Okay, now let's talk about the things that are going to make this a market crash and not a market correction. Things I know for sure. When the Fed starts to taper off, and if this is really high-end macroeconomics, I apologize. Go watch. There's plenty of videos explaining the zero bubble, right? So we have a zero interest rate out of the Fed, and they plan in literally 3 weeks to taper it. The last time they tapered it, the stock market responded by, they call it a market fit or a market tantrum. It started to crash the last time they tried to taper it off. They have no choice now but to taper it off. They can't continue to buy billions and billions and blah, blah, blah. Words. Okay. The first of the month, when they start tapering, it's going to be bad. That'll affect the stock market. That won't have a huge impact on real estate. Most of you seem to live in a fantasy land where you think it's supply and demand that is causing this astronomical appreciation of properties. No, it's that damn 3% interest rate. I swear to God, if that interest rate wasn't so damn low, the reality is we wouldn't be saying it's supply and demand, supply and demand, supply and demand. I don't know why everybody keeps saying that. Supply and demand, supply and demand, supply and demand, supply and demand. Really? Do you know the historical numbers? We actually have about the same inventory we had about a year ago. It isn't a massive supply and demand issue. That is a bullshit lie. I don't even know where the lie started in real estate. We are at about the same inventory level now, right? If it was just demand, it wouldn't create a literal catastrophic escalation of interest rates. That's a fact. Okay. So if I were sitting behind a bank desk, which is what my coaching students pay me to do, and to give you definitive data on what I know, you cannot have a rocket ship of 1 year appreciation without having a rocket ship of depreciation. Make sense? So, what do I think, keyword think, will cause the tipping? Okay. I think tapering of the Fed zero going back up will have an effect. I think the interest rate, which has to go up, will have an effect. And I know for a definitive fact, 3%, which in 2006 was considered catastrophic, but for some reason right now, I'm going to show you what they're doing to make it sound not so bad about defaults for the rest of the. Here's why they keep saying it's not as bad as it looks. This is what I know. The reason they downplay the numbers of distressed properties is they're trying to continue to create more equity in the hopes that these people will sell. On average, defaulted properties right now have $51,500 of equity in those houses. That's the average. God bless Black Knight for doing all the reports so I don't have to do them. They want them to sell, and it will be a lot of inventory. That's not what I'm worried about. So the question that came up was, what worries me? What do I think about Evergrande? It worries the shit out of me, right? So I already know this. Last night, the China bond market started to show signs of a collapse, and it may be carrying into today. That's bad, right? The devaluation of China, and you're wondering, well, what does that have to do with anything? That will not help out the zero bubble. That'll escalate the speed in which they start the Fed's buyback program. And anybody who knows about the stock market, feel free to chime in and correct me if it sounds like I'm not explaining this correctly. Everything is based on the dollar. And I have been saying for years, as a bank professional, that the dollar is the dumbest creature on the planet. It is a borrowed system that requires you to spend it. The reason the economy is good because the government gave us money to go spend money. That all ended 3 weeks ago. And I think everybody thinks, well, we stopped giving out money and the economy is still fine. You think it's going to happen overnight that we're not going to have money? I know for a fact, 10% default rate on cars. I know we're at the highest level of student debt in history. Oh no, houses are fine. Really? So people aren't paying for their car. Nobody paid for their education. People are defaulting on credit cards and payments and everything. But houses are fine. Loans are fine. This is a realtor myth that they want to convince themselves because nobody wants to deal with a default market. I don't know what the big deal is. We're not going to have short sales at the beginning. We're not going to have short sales till next summer. Some places a lot sooner. If you're in Boise, Idaho, you're going to have them a lot sooner. Your depreciation index is through the roof. Okay? But any of my students on the call that are big stock people, you should be watching Evergrande. Evergrande's the tipping point that will affect our dollar. It'll affect the bond. And Michael Burry will be right. Michael Burry, who was the man who predicted the 2007 crash, which was really 2006, but whatever, predicted it correctly and then bet against the market, right? Famously outlined in The Big Short, great movie. Book is way better because it gets into the technical aspects of what he did. It was a product that didn't exist. This dude's betting against the US bond market and something he calls the biggest crash of all time, bigger than the 2007 crash. It will affect real estate. It will affect, right? We have hyperinflation. Everybody see that? I know it. I eat the same thing every single day, more or less. I'm a keto eater. So like my easiest comfort meal is a wedge salad, this kind of keto pizza thing I make, a Coke Zero, and a pint of keto ice cream, right? And I basically buy this on a consistent basis. I have over the last 3 or 4 months, watched those prices rise because I buy the same thing. How is it that I can only buy 1 or 2 bags of groceries for $100 to $150? And I buy Kroger products. I buy the generic products. Why are the prices still going up? We have a supply shortage chain. All of these things matter to real estate. You know why? Because if I can't afford food, I sure as shit can't afford my house. If I can't afford my car, I can't afford my house. I wish everybody would stop trying to put a rose. Oh, the appreciation rate of the housing market is so amazing. It's so amazing. Never been so much wealth in houses. Looky, looky, looky. We're going to dramatically crash. The real estate market is going to dramatically crash. These aren't things I think. These are things I know. These are too many items. If it were one or two, I'd tell you, yeah, we're going to do tapering and everything will be fine. Yeah, they'll raise the interest rate slowly and taper it off, and that'll actually create more demand. More inventory. Want to know what really happens when people start getting evicted, like renters and everything else, and the media gets on it again, and it's story number 2 in the news? Traditional people aren't going to want to sell their houses. They're not. We're already at 60 to 70% of consumers think that we're in some kind of bubble. So you tell me, unless you have to move, why would you move? Unless you're trying to get your equity out. The only people really trying to get their equity out that I've seen for sure are defaulted people who are getting ahead of this. And I'm telling all of you that are on this call that are not actively working in my program or actively working in as part of my previous programs or working in the world of default, you better change now, because I can tell you this about real estate agents and investors. They wait for the 500-pound drop of the weight on their foot. They wait for their foot to break. They wait till they're in traction, and then they go, oh, there's the market. I'm telling you, it's here. The weight is on the way down to the ground to hit their foot. It's happening. It's happening. Those of us that are, when you're in it all the time, you see it every day. We are in the early phases. It's ramping up. Okay, so I'm going to show you some quick numbers to back up what's scaring the shit out of me from last night and why we're talking about all of this today. So let me move this all over here. And if there's any questions from the room, go ahead and start loading them up. I'm good with that. So here, this is my favorite chart that I have seen by far. And I'm going to show you how they spin it, because it makes me really happy that they're spinning it. So what you're looking at is an article on Mortgage Daily News, right? Mortgage people are keeping track of it. Mortgage people think things are going on. They're trying to move as many refis as they can before the interest rates grow up. So they want to tell you in this article, which was generic based on Black Knight numbers, hey, guess what? We're at historic foreclosure lows. I've actually seen this report. Look, less than a year ago, oh my God, 0.2 and 0.3 actively in foreclosure. It's the lowest rate ever since 1999. Oh my God. It's a 22 and a half year low. Do you want me to start with this box and tell you why that's the most hysterical shit of all time? Okay, let's start with the pink, which is right. Let's start with a year ago. We were in a pandemic and an eviction moratorium. You couldn't even file paperwork. That 0.3 are just private investors. That should scare people. 0.3 of the market is just private money. Well, it's July 2021. It's actually less. Oh my gosh. How exciting, right? Look at that. Look at this box. Foreclosures rate to a fell of a new 22 and a half year low. Oh my God. Don't you just love the Republicans and the Democrats, or whichever side you like? Okay. Whatever that's about. Okay. Yeah. And by the way, I think they're both the same. I'm a banker. 0.2%. Do you know why it's less? 0.1% actually foreclosed or managed to pull it off or work out a deal. The rest are carryover from a year ago when we were in the middle of an eviction moratorium. So of course it's going to be less. Hell, I think that if they could keep the eviction moratorium going for another year, it'd be 0.1 next year at the current rate. Look, you can see it decline. Now, let's talk about the shit that scares me to death, right? July 2020, a year ago, we had 6.5%. 6.5%. By the way, catastrophic. That were 30 days late. But look, it fell 2% to 4.2%. The 2% gap, okay, are people who were taking advantage of the forbearance program. Ta-da! That means that 4% as of July are still DQ. I would imagine this drops down another 1% to now. These numbers are from July. They're always trailing by a month or two. But I suspect August was the last chance to pay it off before it went on your credit, right? So that number will drop. Okay. 30 to 60 days. This is such a weird, dramatic, weird difference that I don't have a real answer to it. Okay. These numbers all in here have different cure rates. So they're buckets. Let me teach you something. 31 days at 5 p.m., you're 30 days late. That's a different collection source. It's very passive. 61 days at 5 p.m., you're 60 days late. I don't know why they say 59. Whatever. This is not how it works. But whatever. It has a different collection system with a bank. At 91 days at 5 p.m., there's a different bucket. Now, there is no tracking, to my knowledge, of 90 to 119. I don't even know what that is. At 91 days at 5 p.m., 75% of the people that are in default, any of these people, right, they will carry all the way through and never make another payment again. And statistically, will always transfer title. Either the bank will do it or they'll do it. Got it? So these three things, I don't know what fantasy land this is. I jumped from the DQs right over to 90. See, it says 90, but like they're tracking this 90 to 120. That's not a thing. That's not a data source. This is like some bullshit made up thing. Like, oh, look, 1.7 down to 0.4. Well, yeah, look, everything from a year ago to here is got to be lower. It has to be. We were in a pandemic. We weren't reporting it to credit. How would you know? Did you interview the banks directly to come up with these numbers? The banks were saying approximately 10%, which based on what I'm looking at, definitely shows that approximately 10% of their portfolio is in default. That should scare the shit out of you. Okay. This is the number that I'm looking at. 91 days at 5 p.m. Serious delinquencies, 75% are going to pull through. It's 3% right now. It's 2.8%. It's 3%. 3%. And it carries over to 120 plus days, right? It carries over into NOD, list pendants. They're side by side. Look at this number and notice, and in all of these reports that came out by Black Knight, nobody's talking about this number. Like this 120 plus day number, which jumps out on the chart. Why are they exactly the same? Because about 2.5% overall are in serious delinquency. Generally speaking, 10% are non-performing. That is a very common number in the industry. So between 5 and 10% is a constant for 30, 60, 90-day buckets, right? They adjust, they change, they go down, right? So 30 is always going to be the highest. 60 is somewhere in the middle. And then before 90 is the next lowest, right? These are all deal maker zones, right? Real live people. You go to the next level, it goes to, more of a different collection department. They're different collection departments. Serious delinquencies are interesting. This is the one that I look at. This means NOD, NOS, list pendants, auction. It didn't change in a year, even during the friggin' pandemic. That's bad. 2.4% of the market. In actual foreclosure is what they're trying to tell you has a notice of default or actually has a sale date, I would imagine. You're right. It was 0.3 in July and it was 0.2 the year before. That's a bullshit number. Made up so that everything looks good. You guys should be staring at that 2.4 and burning holes in it. 2.5% of the market is going to get a sale or an auction date. That, coupled with the fact that we know that 1.6 million people have an active forbearance agreement that they have not paid back, that is about to be put on their credit. And I'll say it again, everybody in the coaching room, if you have a forbearance agreement, you are in default, right? It's not even a part of this number. It's not. They're off the book numbers. So 2.4 plus another 1.6, 3%, 4% of the market that will have at least a notice of default. I'm not talking about arrangements. I'm not talking about Ginnie Mae and their 40-year fixed or FHA, which is a shit show. I'm not talking about any of that. Okay. What I'm saying is, if you fundamentally do not believe that the market is going to shift starting in November, you are delusional and you whistle in the dark to keep your spirits up. For those listening to this or watching the video, check out homeadvocates.io/event and watch my last webinar on the 10 things I know about the market and the 10 things I think about the market. Take advantage, join our program while my CEO is effing delusional and keeps giving away our product at 66% off. Sign up for our podcast, our videos, click, smash the like, YouTube, subscribe, whatever that thing is all about. I'm a fucking banker. I'm not going to talk like a kid when I cut content. I'm going to answer questions from my group. And hopefully you sign up and get more information from me, because I am the only expert in distressed properties. I am the one who created all the designation programs. I trained them. And I am telling you, like Punxsutawney Phil, the sky is falling. It just started. Thanks.